Great, so welcome back, and this is question 511. It's called Gameplay Analysis 1. So for this question, we're given a activity table with 4 different columns. The first is a player ID. We have a device ID, event date, and games played. And so what we want to do with these columns is essentially we just output the distinct player IDs. So here we're logging each time a player logs onto their device and at what date, and it just gives you an arbitrary number of games played. And so you can actually just ignore the device ID and games played columns entirely. I think that's involved for, analysis 2, like the second question after this. So we just are looking at the player ID and the event date. And so we just want to see when's the first time a particular player logged on. And so I'm going to actually show you 2 different solutions. They're both very easy. And I think this is a great question to be in this easy category. So the first solution will be using a correlated subquery. Now it's much slower than the second solution I'll give you, which is using a Windows function. And so you can actually see the difference in the time. So this is the first solution, just using a correlated subquery. And then this will be using the Windows function. So there's going to be massive performance enhancements using the second solution. So for the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to select, this will be using a correlated subquery, but first we're going to bring it from our activity table. And in the where clause, this is where we're actually going to be using that subquery. And so we're going to select the, I believe, player ID. Yep. And then we're also going to select the event date, and we're going to set it as this alias that we want. And so we're going to check where the event date is equal to the event date that's coming from this subquery. And so here we're just going to select the min date or the min event date as our kind of output from the subquery. Min. And this is also coming from our activity table. We'll just call this A2 and give this the alias A1. And we want to do this for each player ID. So for A1.playerID is equal to our secondary temporary table's player ID. Great, so what this is going to do is for, each player ID, it'll run through, all the rows that's equal to that player ID. So for player 1, it'll look at these ones and find the min date for it. And so you can see why it's kind of slow is because it has to evaluate it for each player. So to do player 1, look at all the tables in the subquery, where it's equal to that player ID, then 2, and so it's kind of like, an n squared, I would think in an algorithm sense, but I'm not quite sure. So yeah, let's go ahead and run that. I think it's okay. Oh, I forgot to add a column. And this needs a T here. And submit that. And success. So we're going to go ahead and look at, you can see the long runtime here, and look at the second solution. So for this is using a Windows function where we're simply going to select the player ID again. And this is all coming from our activity table. And so now we just need our first login. So we're going to give this column an alias. And so now we're going to once again select the minimum event date using this min function. But this is going to go as a Windows function over, and we're going to partition it by, let's make this all capital case, partition by the player ID. Great, so what this is doing is we're running kind of this min function, and we're doing it over each player ID, and so we're kind of splitting it into separate tables of this player ID. So we're just kind of looking at them independently. So it kind of splits each of these all at once and just grabs the minimum for it and just returns it as the first login. Okay, so if you go ahead and run that. Oh, let's look here. So one caveat that we have to add as well is this will be actually returning the minimum for each row. And so when it's looking at this, for this example, it's looking at, okay, for this row, which of these is the minimum? Okay, this is the minimum, so it returns that. And then it looks at the second row here, which of these two is the minimum? Okay, it's the first one, so it kind of duplicates this exact same row. And so it's returning this value once again, but for this row. So what we do to fix that is we just add a distinct to our player ID. So once again, if we run that and submit it, and success. And this one's much faster. It doesn't appear as faster as when I ran it here, but it can change a lot sometimes. So I hope that helped, and good luck with the rest of your algorithms. Thank you.